This happened a few years ago when I was serving in the Coast Guard up in Maine. We had a call about a lighthouse that had gone dark 13 miles off the coast, a small stone tower on an island called Matinus Rock. The keeper, a man named Harold Pierce, had stopped checking in 2 weeks before. Usually, if something went wrong, he'd radio the mainland, but this time, nothing. The higher-ups assumed he'd either quit without telling anyone, or his generator died. Either way, they sent 2 of us to check it out and fix the signal light. It was supposed to be an easy trip, half a day's job, but we ended up stuck there for 3 days. The other guy they sent with me was Mark. He'd been with the Coast Guard for about a year longer than me. Calm, quiet type. The weather that morning was grey, with fog sitting heavy over the water. The sea was calm but cold, and the ride out felt longer than it should have. 13 miles doesn't sound far until you can't see the land anymore. It's just you, the water, and this thick, pale mist that looks like it's swallowing everything. We spotted the lighthouse after about an hour. The light wasn't turning. No signal, no movement, no smoke from the chimney. The island itself was barely more than a pile of rocks with a bit of grass. Just the tower, a small keeper's house beside it, and a wooden dock that looked half rotten. Mark tied the boat down while I radioed in to say we'd arrived. No response. The signal barely went through. I shrugged it off. Figured we'd get better reception once we fixed the main antenna. The front door of the keeper's house was unlocked. Inside it smelled like damp wood and cold air. Dust covered everything. On the kitchen table sat a half-empty cup of coffee. Black, thick with mold. The chair beside it was pulled out, like someone had just stood up and never came back. We called out for Harold a few times. Nothing. The logbook by the radio said his last entry was 16 days ago. Heavy fog, light malfunctioning again. We'll check lantern room tomorrow. After that, nothing. We went up to the tower. The steps creaked under our boots as we climbed. Everything felt too quiet, like the sound just died before it could echo. The lantern room at the top was empty, except for a single item sitting on the floor near the light panel. A uniform. It was neatly folded. Cap, jacket, everything. Right next to it, his name tag, H. Pierce. Mark and I just looked at each other. There was no note, no sign of blood or a struggle. Just that uniform sitting there like he'd taken it off on purpose and vanished. Mark said maybe he'd gone for a swim and drowned, but that didn't make sense. The water around the island was freezing, and the tide was too rough. Nobody would have survived long. We checked outside anyway. Nothing but rocks, water, and fog thick enough to hide your hand. That first night, we decided to stay. The weather was turning bad, and the boat wasn't safe to take back in rough water. So we figured we'd spend the night, fix the light in the morning, and leave. We set up in the living room, using our flashlight since the generator wouldn't start. The air felt colder than it should have, even with the windows shut. Around midnight, Mark started getting uneasy. "You hear that?" he said. At first I didn't, but then I caught it. This low, dragging sound coming from inside the walls, like something sliding down the pipes or moving between the boards. We thought maybe rats, but it was too heavy. It moved slow, like someone walking barefoot on wood. I got up and checked the hall. Nothing. The sound stopped when I moved, then started again when I sat down. We didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, the fog was still thick. We went back up to the lantern room to work on the light. I was checking the wiring when I noticed something odd. The glass around the light had handprints on it. Not like someone cleaning it, but greasy, smudged prints all over, like someone had been pressing their hands against it from the inside, trying to look out. I asked Mark if he saw it before. He said no, it wasn't there yesterday. That's when we both heard the radio come alive downstairs. It was faint at first, just static. Then a voice came through. "Hello." I froze. The signal was weak, but I swear the voice said my name. "Evan, can you hear me?" Mark looked at me. "That's not possible," he whispered. We ran downstairs. The radio light was flickering, but the microphone was untouched. I picked it up and said, "This is Officer Evan Moore, Coast Guard Unit 421. "Who's calling?" No reply, just static. Then, clear as day, "Don't go outside." That's all it said. We tried to call back, but the signal died completely. I checked the antenna. It wasn't even connected to the power source. The thing hadn't worked since we arrived. Mark wanted to leave that day, but the storm had picked up. Rain started pounding against the glass, and the waves slammed hard against the rocks. We were trapped. That night, things got worse. Around 2 a.m, we both woke up to the sound of footsteps above us. Slow, steady steps moving across the tower floor. We thought maybe the wind was shaking something loose, but when we looked up the stairwell, we saw the lantern light turning. It was faint, but it was moving. The light had been dead since we got there. We grabbed our flashlights and climbed fast. Each step felt heavier, like the air was pressing down on us. When we reached the top, the light was off again, but the uniform we'd seen folded neatly. It was gone. In its place was a wet footprint, barefoot. The next morning, we packed up to leave. We didn't care about the storm anymore. I kept thinking about that voice on the radio, about the handprints, about the sound in the walls. But when we got to the dock, our boat was gone. The rope was still tied, but the boat wasn't there. Just frayed ends floating in the water, like it had been cut loose. Mark cursed under his breath. "We're stuck here," he said. We went back inside, trying to figure out what to do. The fog outside was thicker than ever, so dense it looked solid. You couldn't see more than a few feet out the window. Then the radio turned on again. It crackled for a bit. Then we heard a voice. This time, it wasn't mine. It said Mark's name. It said it over and over, like someone whispering it too close to the microphone. He tried to answer, but the voice kept talking. The words got clearer, slower. "Mark, come upstairs." We both froze. He looked at me, pale as a ghost. "That wasn't your voice, was it?" I shook my head. "No, man, it wasn't." We didn't move for an hour. The foghorn outside started blaring by itself. Deep, low sounds echoing through the walls. The whole tower seemed to shake with it. Then, for just a second, the light at the top turned on again. Bright, spinning, cutting through the fog. And in that flash, I saw something standing by the dock. It looked like a man, but he wasn't moving. Just standing there soaked, clothes clinging to his body. Even from that distance, I could tell he wasn't breathing. The light spun past again, and he was gone. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He kept pacing, muttering that we had to leave, that the fog was messing with his head. I tried to calm him down, but he wasn't listening. Around midnight, I heard him whisper something. I thought he was talking to me, but when I looked up, he was standing by the radio again. It was on. He was whispering into it, saying, "Okay, I'm coming." Before I could stop him, he ran outside. I chased after him into the fog, yelling his name. The sound just disappeared, swallowed up by the mist. I couldn't see him, couldn't see anything. Then I heard the splash. I ran to the edge of the rocks, but all I saw was black water. I shouted for him until my throat hurt. No answer. When I finally went back inside, the radio was still on. It was whispering my name again. I don't remember falling asleep that night, but I must have. When I woke up, it was morning, and the fog had started to clear. The boat had drifted back to the dock. It was half full of water, rope shredded, but it was there. I grabbed the logbook, the radio, anything I could carry, and left. I didn't look back. When I got to the mainland, the base said they'd send another crew to look for Mark. They didn't find him, not even his life vest. They asked me to write a report about everything. I told them the truth. They said it was stress, isolation, fog hallucination, all that. But I know what I went through. A few months later, I heard they locked the lighthouse for good. No one's been stationed there since.